Good morning, I'm Drew Carlson from AAA Northeast, and I'm joined with the AAA car doctor, John Paul, and today we're going to be talking about car care tips, specifically tires. John, what can you say about tires? Some people say they're the most important part of the car.
Well, they're more than just round and black.
That's right.
You know, tires are a very important part of your car. A lot of people think about tires as how they control the way the car performs, which they do, but they're also the only part of the car that touches the ground. You think about that. That's
where the rubber meets the road, right?
Exactly.
Oh.
That's how important they are. And tires do more than just hold the car up. That's what gives you the traction you need to not just get going, but also to stop. If you have bald tires on your car and it's a wet day, your car's going to slide and it's just not going to dig in and stop because there isn't the friction you need there to really slow the car down or let the car perform properly in an emergency maneuver.
So talking about tire treads, how often should someone check their treads and what's the best way to do that?
Tire treads should be checked periodically throughout the year just to see how they're doing. Obviously, if you have brand new tires, you don't need to do that. But once they get maybe 25 or 30,000 miles on them, go out and look at the tire tread. If you see a bar that goes across the middle of the tire, that's the wear bar. When that becomes flush with the tread, that means the tire is completely worn out. It's down to 2/32 of an inch. We've done a bunch of testing at work, and we've found that 2/32 is really too far. When you get down to about 4/32, that's where you should consider replacing tires on your car for the same reason. Traction is diminished greatly in wet weather. So on dry weather, those 2/32 tires, they'll stop okay. But in wet weather, you might need another 100 feet to stop.
Right.
And you think about that, how far that is. Well, that's the difference between a major crash and one that didn't happen. Mm-hmm. So we used to say, take a penny and put it in the tread, and if it came up to Lincoln's head, 2/32 tire was worn out. We've moved up to a quarter now, and a quarter, the distance between the top of Washington's head and the edge of the quarter is actually about 4/32. So take the quarter, go across the tread, so don't just hit it one spot, go all the way across, and as long as the tread is somewhere covering Washington's head, you're in good shape.
Right. And it's interesting, so I have a pickup truck, and sometimes I know when it's a little rainy out, if I accelerate too quickly, it will skid. Is there any reason for that? Is it the tires, or is it the...
It's your driving.
Yeah, it's poor driving, that's true.
Poor driving.
Yeah.
No, part of it is inherently a pickup truck is light in the back, there's no weight. And it could be your tires are a little bit worn, so a little bit of high acceleration, no weight over the rear tires. And that's why sometimes in the wintertime, people will put weight in the back of a pickup truck.
Bags of sand.
Bags of sand in the back of the truck to weigh it down a little bit, to give it a little bit more traction.
Right. And talking about tire pressure, how do I find out the recommended tire pressure for a certain vehicle?
The recommended tire pressure, open up the car door, usually on the driver's side of the car, there's a placard, and that placard will tell you how much tire pressure to put in your tires. A lot of people make the mistake, and we have tires behind us, a lot of people make a mistake, and they'll read what it says on the side of the tire. That's the maximum inflation pressure. Mm-hmm. You would only use that if, for instance, you were in your pickup truck, for instance, if you were carrying 1,000 pounds in the back and you were going any real distance, you'd want to max out the tire pressure to try to compensate for the weight, because the air is what controls how much weight the tire can hold.
Right.
So, but you should go by whatever the vehicle manufacturer says. They design the air pressure to go along with the handling of the vehicle. So the pressure may be lower or higher, and that's going to affect how well the vehicle handles. So look at the door placard, get a tire gauge. It doesn't have to be an expensive one, it just has to be an accurate one. So you can spend $5 or $6 for a pencil style tire gauge, simple one. You can spend $25 for an electronic one if you want, or something in between. And check the tires when it's cool. First thing in the morning, go out and check them. Maybe your car hasn't moved all weekend, it's a nice afternoon, go out and check the tire pressure. If the tires are a little bit low, then go someplace, air them up to the proper inflation pressure. You don't want to check them after you've been driving on the highway for an hour, because physics just tells us that the molecules move around, warms up, the tire pressure goes up. So
would you say the best way to check is that cheap pencil tester? Because sometimes the gas stations have them.
The gas station ones are inherently inaccurate.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Spend $5 or $6 and buy a tire gauge. and simple enough.
Okay. You hear about people who sometimes overinflate their tires in the winter or underinflate them if they're going off-road. Specifically, what is the reason you would overinflate or underinflate a tire?
There's never really a great reason to overinflate a tire. Some people will overinflate a tire slightly because they feel it gives them better gas mileage.
Right.
So the car just rolls better. Good example, if you've ever tried to move a wheelbarrow with a regular tire on the front of it and it's almost flat, it's hard to roll. You inflate that wheelbarrow tire up, all of a sudden it's easy to roll. Same thing with your car. So some people think, well, I'll overinflate the tires. You overinflate the tires, they tend to wear in the center, so they just don't wear properly. So overinflating the tires doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Some people will underinflate tires in the wintertime thinking you'll get more traction. That's not really true either, because as you underinflate the tire, the lines of tread will tend to close up, and then you don't get the traction you need. Different story if you're going off-roading. If you were taking your pickup truck off-road, you need to overinflate the tire because you don't want to dig up the sand. So if you were going down to Nauset Beach and you would probably run your tires at 10 pounds of air pressure, you would never do that on the road, but you could do that off-road.
Right. So how often should someone rotate their tires in alignment too? How often is that, and is it really necessary?
It's a good idea to rotate the tires on a car maybe twice a year or so. It's a good excuse also when the tires are off and you're moving them front to back. It's a good excuse to also look at the brakes. You can see what kind of shape the brakes are in because the wheels are off, and that way you don't have to worry about, my brakes are a little bit worn or whatever. You know right there. It helps even out the tire wear. Sometimes you talk to people and they never rotate their tires because they look at them and they're wearing evenly all the way across. But you want to catch the wear before it really starts to make a permanent impression in the tire. So twice a year, not a bad idea. It's money well spent. Again, you can look at the brakes. And when it comes to wheel alignment, I always used to say, get your wheels aligned after they fill the potholes in.
Yep.
Because a good pothole can knock the car out of alignment. Problem is we have potholes year round, it seems like, and if you're driving your car and you momentarily let go of the steering wheel and it drifts to one side, if you're driving your car and the steering wheel always used to be straight across and now it's this way or this way just a little bit, tip one side or the other, then the car's out of alignment.
Right.
Because when it's perfectly aligned, the steering wheel should be straight across, and if you let go of the wheel for a minute, it should track nice and straight.
Yeah, I find that if I don't have my hand steady on the wheel, I'll be in the ditch in 2 seconds. So maybe that's something.
You might want to get that looked at.
Yeah. Just remember, guys, we're answering questions on our Facebook Live. If you have any questions you'd like to ask John, feel free to write them in the comments. The next question: is there a difference in more expensive tires, and what should I look for when I'm buying new tires?
Well, there is a difference, obviously. You get what you pay for. You can get tires that are more value priced, I guess is the politically correct word for saying it. And those tires may be made by a major tire company, they may be made by somebody else. There's companies that have been selling tires in the United States now for a few years. The tires are made in China, tires are made in Indonesia. Quality of the tires is okay. The standard that a lot of people match tires up against are some of the premium brands like Michelin, Pirelli, Goodyear. Are these value price tires as good? They'll do okay. But they may not give you the long life or the good ride. But if you need 4 tires on your car and you're only going to drive it another 25 or 30,000 miles, and you look at tires that are $50 cheaper than the best tire, put them on and see what happens. But there is a characteristic difference. I put a more inexpensive tire on my car a couple of years ago, and the snowy weather performance, when we just got a half an inch of snow, was nowhere near as good as it was with the tires that were on there previous.
You hear about people trying to save money and buy, used tires. You ever recommend that? Is that a bad idea, or is it?
The problem with used tires is, unless you really know how old they are,
right.
Typically a tire life is somewhere in the 7 to 10 year range, and you may pick up a used tire that looks great,
right,
and come to find out it's 10 years old. That's not a tire you want to put a lot of miles on. You can look at the date code on the tire. They'll give you an idea when it's made.
Okay.
So used tires, sometimes it depends what you want to do.
Right. All right, so next question is, how often should I change my antifreeze? My car is 8 years old and has a has 50,000 miles on it.
It's time to change it. For the person who checked in with that, engine coolant should be changed depending on the car, somewhere between every 3 and 5 years. The coolant can get rusty, but it also loses some of the additives in it. And the additives in antifreeze lubricate the water pump and prevent rust from building up and scale from building up inside the radiator. So you leave the coolant in there for a long time, it's going to tend to cause the radiator to get kind of gunky inside. And especially if it's a General Motors car. General Motors has a long life antifreeze. It's kind of an orangey color, and if you allow it to run low, it tends to turn into this. It looks like chocolate pudding.
Oh.
Yeah, it looks really bad. So you want to look at it periodically. Sometimes the color of it won't tell you anything. And now with what we use in a lot of cases, we take something that looks like the same kind of dip strip you'd use to check the pH in a swimming pool.
Yep.
You dip it in the radiator, you take it out, and you find out, oh, it's acidic, and that can actually do some damage to your car.
That's something you can easy to change yourself, or would you recommend bringing it in?
It used to be so easy to do, but now cars, it's still relatively easy to do, but you have to watch out. Sometimes some cars have a very specific refilling procedure that you need to bleed off the air that builds up in the car. So you think you drained out 1.5 gallons of antifreeze, you put 1 gallon in, it seems full, and you're like, oh, it must be okay. Well, there's an air clog in there, and the car could overheat, and like I said, some cars actually have a specific procedure for making sure you don't have any air pockets.
Are some of the newer ones, or is it?
Yeah,
Of course.
Yeah.
All right. Next question is, what's the difference between snow tires and all-season tires? Do I need different tires in the winter?
The difference between snows and all-weather tires, and we don't even call them snow tires anymore. We're trying to get people to change that terminology. We like to call them winter tires. Because a winter tire, the rubber composition stays softer and stickier as the temperature drops. So we don't drive in snow that often, but we drive in cold weather a lot. And if you have, especially performance tires, even they may be performance all-season tires, they don't work as good at giving you the traction you need when the temperature starts to drop below, say, 40 degrees. An all-weather tire, an all-season tire, is sort of like a one-size-fits-all tire. It's supposed to be good in the winter, it's supposed to be good in the summer, it's supposed to be good in the rain. What it is, it's okay in all of those, but it's a compromise in all of those. So is it the best high-performance summer tire? No. Is it the best winter tire? No. But if you don't have to be out before the snow plows are out, you'll be okay. Right. You know, the all-season tire will give you about 70% of the traction of a winter tire and maybe up to 4 or 5 inches of snow. So if your driving doesn't take you out any more than that, an all-season tire is okay. But if you have to be out early. If you have to be to work because you drive a tow truck for AAA, you're a nurse, somebody who has to be out early to cover the time they need to be at work, there's no substitute for 4 winter tires on your car.
Right.
Even if your car is not all-wheel drive, 4 winter tires will give you the traction you want in all weather conditions.
Good to know. My tire pressure monitoring system light goes on a lot. I've had the tires checked and they're fine. What's the deal? Can I ignore the light? That's a real question.
And only because that question comes up a lot with a lot of people. First off, tire pressure monitor systems are very sensitive. So it can take just a couple of pounds of air pressure. So you get out there and you look at your tires and you go, they look fine, what's the big deal? Some cars actually have a tire pressure monitor that's built into the spare tire. So you check all 4 tires, you're like, it's good, what's the problem? And come to find out your spare is low.
No, yeah.
The biggest problem with tire pressure monitors today are most of them there's 2 types of tire pressure monitor systems. One is called a direct system, where there's actually a little transmitter in each wheel, and it sends a radio signal to the car, and it tells you how much air is in the tire. It may tell you specifically pounds per inch, it may just tell you the tires are properly inflated. The second type is an indirect system, and it actually uses a combination of electronics in the car, and it measures how fast the tire rotates. A lower tire rotates at a different speed than a fully inflated tire. Volkswagen and Audi, for instance, use the indirect system. It's simpler. It uses a conventional valve stem. The direct systems use a very fancy valve stem that could be $75 or $100. The problem is the battery that's inside these systems lasts about 5 to 7 years. So when the battery in one of the sensors goes bad, the system knows there's a faulty sensor, and it will turn on the main tire pressure light. So it may not say the tires are low, it's just telling you the tire pressure system's not working properly. Here's what happens. If you have one of those cars that the tire pressure light comes on intermittently, buy that tire gauge, go out, check your tire pressure. If it's supposed to be 32 and 30, and it's 32 and 30, don't worry about it.
Yeah.
Put a piece of tape over the light.
Sometimes during like warm days and then it gets cooler at night or cooler the next day, it'll go down.
Yeah. Sort of the Tom Brady football thing.
Oh, yeah, nice shot. Next question is, what do all the numbers and letters on the side of the tire mean? Are they important for me to know?
There is a lot of information on the sides of the tire. It's going to start with a P, which means passenger. It's going to give you an aspect ratio, which is going to tell you the width versus the height. And it's also going to give you something called speed rating, which is how high that tire has been tested to. Okay. The only important thing you need to know is if your car has 205 65 16s on it, and it has a certain speed rating, that's the tire you want to replace it with. You don't want to put on something that's not going to be as good. You don't want to put on something that's going to be a different size. You might go, hey, these 205 65 16s are really expensive, but the 195 65 16s aren't. Because they're more popular. You can't switch them around. The tires were put on that. An engineer who designed the car designed the size for the car. And when you go up or down, you're affecting how the car can handle and perform. You're going to change the speed, the speedometer reads. It's going to make a change in the car. Look at the numbers on the side. You can go to, there's plenty of reference material. You can look those things up, whether it's a tire store website or online resource, and you can find out exactly what each number means. But the important part to you is look what size tire is on the car, what's supposed to be on there. If it's an older car, look on the door placard. That's going to tell you what size the car came with, and then match them up with the same thing.
And talking about four-wheel drive and all-wheel drive vehicles, is there any damage you can do to the car? Say if you get a flat tire and you have to replace one of the wheels or one of the tires with something that doesn't match up to the other three. Is there any damage that can happen with that, or is that?
So you're driving down the road, you hit a big chunk of metal in the road, blow out the right front tire, and you can't find the exact tire match. That can be a problem. Tires should really be matched up in pairs, and if it's an all-wheel drive vehicle, an Audi, a Volvo, something like that, it's important that the tires match, and all four of them all the way around. So it's really important. So, I mean, if you have a flat tire and there's one tire at the tire store that fits your car, you need it, and that's what you're going to have to use. And then it would make sense to get a second tire to at least match that one.
Okay, so at least two.
Yeah, at least two. What happens is different tire tread performs differently sometimes, and it might seem perfectly normal, but all of a sudden you're like, I'm hearing a weird noise I never heard before. That's the difference in the tread designs. Will sometimes do that. In an extreme case, you hit the brakes really hard in wet weather, and one tire is going to grip more than the other one is. So it's best if you can match them up, at least in pairs. You're going to get the best performance. Cool.
All right, so the last question of the day is, why don't newer cars come with a spare tire?
Well, some cars don't, and there's a couple of reasons that people think that's the case. Some people think it's just the car manufacturers being cheap. So you go out and you buy a new car and you open up the trunk and you go, well, how come there's no spare? Well, those cheap people are not putting spare tires in cars. Some of it is really weight. It's weight management in the car. The car manufacturers literally put cars on gram diets. They look where they can save a gram of weight here or there, make the windshields thinner, less wiring, smaller wire, everything they can do to save weight. The spare tire is a real easy target. So behind us is two spare tires. One that's a perfect match for the car, and the one on the other side is a compact tire that is designed to use a little air compressor to fill it up. They all have limitations. I like having a spare tire in the car. At AAA, we have a list of about 165 cars that may or may not have a spare tire. So when someone calls us for road service, we say to them, and they say they have a flat tire, we'll ask them if they have a spare, because if it's a Hyundai Elantra, pretty run-of-the-mill car, it may not have a spare. Wow. Chevy Cruze may not have a spare. It has a spare tire inflation kit, which is basically a little air compressor with some goo in it that pumps up the tire and fills the hole, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's a good repair. In fact, if you drove on it flat for a little while, airing up that tire could actually turn into a pretty catastrophic event. So having a spare tire, if I bought a car without a spare tire, I'd go buy a spare tire to put in it, and a jack and a lug wrench so I could change it.
All right, it's good information. So that was the last question of the day. Thank you so much for joining us. John, is there anything else you'd like to add?
I would like to talk about the Michelin tire giveaway.
Okay.
Because on my own Facebook page, I didn't do a good job, so I will here. Go to AAA.com/CarCareMonth and look for the Michelin tire giveaway. It's a $1,000 value, and the tires will be mounted and installed by one of our AAR shops.
John will come out himself and actually put the tires on the
Well,
car.
I won't do that, but I will
you'll do
actually
it.
check the tire pressure on all
do
4
it.
tires once they're on the car.
All right, thank you so much.
Hey, and we are going to be doing another Facebook Live, by the way. We're going to be doing that next Thursday, a little bit in the afternoon, I think right around 1 o'clock. So stay tuned for that one, and hopefully we'll get a lot more questions, and it'll be a fun topic. See you all next time.